I'm going to explain to you exactly how you can create a natural look so it looks really nice and flawless, but at the same time real, like real skin, and it doesn't look over the top. I'm going to be starting with my skincare. Now, I am going to be making this really detailed, by the way, because I just feel like there are videos I've done in the past which are for natural makeup, and I have found that I get a lot of questions and maybe, you know, it's not detailed enough. So this is an ultra detailed one. First off, I am going to be applying my skincare. Now, I have washed my face using my cleanser and it's dried off and we're all ready for skincare. So first off, I'm going to apply my eye cream. I like to do this first a lot of the time, especially when I'm doing a natural look, because I do feel like it allows, by the time you apply your foundation, like moisturizer, you've kind of allowed your eye cream like a bit of time to be able to sink in as well, and I don't want to rub it so much in that it just disappears. So I'm going to be using my PIXI Beauty Roll-On Detoxify Serum. I'm really liking this at the moment because it's like a cool rollerblade, and although there are many kind of eye creams and serums around that have these kind of rollerblades on them, I do feel like this is probably one of the easiest ones I've used. I don't know if it's just a simple tube or what, but I just find it so easy, mess free, and too much doesn't come out. It's just kind of like the right amount. Now, regardless of applying it with the actual kind of tube and applicator, I always do kind of just go over with my fingers to make sure there's not too much kind of like sitting around the area there. So I just go like that, take off the excess on the back of my hand, and then just kind of like let it sink into my skin. See, and I don't want it, like I said, to be too dry. So I let that kind of like dry itself. Now what I want to do is use a serum. Now I do want a kind of glowy look, but not greasy. And there's a fine line, trust me. I'm using my RHODE glazing milk, and this is great to just let it sink into the skin. It's just a really nice kind of serum to just hydrate your skin. It's very simple, and I think that's why I like RHODE products. Like, I don't think it's just a hype. It genuinely is pretty simple. So there you go. We're going to let that sink into the skin. Now, once you've kind of let that dry down a little bit, you want to move into your moisturizer. Now, I am using my IT Cosmetics Confidence in a cream. This is a great everyday cream, and I just feel like I can always rely on it. So once you've let this kind of settle down a bit, which is really important, by the way, because when you are doing any kind of look, especially when you're doing a natural look, you really want to focus on making sure that you're leaving enough time between your skincare layers so that you're allowing the product to sink into the skin, for your skin to absorb it, for it to actually do its job. Otherwise, if you don't leave enough time in between, it's literally just all mixing together. You might as well have just kind of like mixed your serum in with your moisturizer and just slapped it on, and that's it. Now, this has kind of had enough time. It's like, you can see that glow, but it isn't actually sticky or wet. So now we're going to go in with the moisturizer, and I make sure that I really get this all over my hands properly, and it's not a lot where you can see the white of the cream, like the product. And then I again press this in. I do feel like pressing in your skincare does make a huge difference. And I know it might seem minor, but it really does make a difference, because you're not kind of like dragging your skin around. You're not kind of like pulling your skin too much, which I've just realized over the years is just anything to avoid pulling it further down. Like anything to help it get, like, keep its lift is going to work for me. So now that we've done that, we can now move on to the next step, which is basically applying your foundation. Now, when it comes to kind of like creating a natural look, I really would suggest applying your foundation before applying your concealer. I know you've heard me speak about underpainting a million times, and I absolutely love it, and I still do. But if you are going for a natural look, like a very natural look that really enhances your skin, then I would suggest using your foundation first. Applying your foundation first for this type of look in particular is going to work well, because what happens is you apply your foundation, you already know that you don't need as much concealer as you probably thought you did. If I had gone in with my concealer now, I'm probably going to focus way too much on trying to give myself coverage with a thick textured product, which definitely has more coverage than a foundation. And then by the time I get to my foundation, I'm having to really kind of like apply a lot less of that. And because the texture of a concealer is always a lot thicker than a foundation, it's gonna be heavier, right? So I don't want to go in first with that heavy product. I want to go in first with a light product so that it kind of gives me whatever coverage I need. And then by the time I get to that thick, heavy product, which is a concealer, it's not actually needed as much, if that makes sense. So let's apply a nice foundation, which isn't going to look heavy on the skin. It's not thick, it's not cakey, and it does kind of sink into the skin a bit to really kind of like let our skin shine through, but the best version of it. So I'm going to be using my Laura Mercier Tinted Moisturizer, which gives a natural dewy finish, but I don't want it to be overly dewy. So just hear me out, because we're going to really get that perfect level of coverage and your skin's still going to look like skin. So we're going to go for the 3W Palomo. Oh, well, I don't know how you say that. It says, oh, it's Palomino. Okay, that was a fail. Okay, so we've got this on the back of the hand. There you go. We've got some right there. And considering this is a tinted moisturizer, by the way, they've actually reformulated this. So the new one out is actually really good. It's not that I didn't like the first one, but I just feel like they've really improved it. And I think that's really good that they've done that. This is also SPF 30, which is great. I'm going to get my Hourglass brush. This is like the slanted, I think it's the foundation brush. And I am just going to literally go into this tinted moisturizer, really buff it into the brush. Now we're going to start from the top and work our way down. So I'm literally just going to buff this in. Now the reason I'm using a kind of like slightly smaller sized brush head is because I do want a bit more precision. Like I don't want a big brush where I'm just like kind of going all over. I really want to focus on trying to get that really nice finish. Now it may feel like not a lot of this product is actually going onto your skin. Don't worry about that, because it's normal to feel that, because it is a very light finish, but you really want it to stay light because you don't want a whole load of product on there. And don't worry, you can always build it up, you know, if you feel like you need that extra kind of coverage. So this is initially just your first layer. Now bear in mind that when you actually do this, it isn't going to take as long as what I'm taking, because you're probably going to be a lot quicker once you've done this a few times. Also, you're not going to be talking while you're applying it, so understand that. And the reason I'm talking so much when I'm going through this is because I really genuinely do want to teach. I don't just want to apply it and then say to you guys, well, go try it and hope for the best, because that is literally what happens when you watch videos which don't have enough explanation in them. To me, I'm just really old school. I'm just like, where has the education gone? Like I can't watch a video with no sound and no talking and know exactly what her pressure is, what the amount of product she's used, like all these things you're gonna have to guess otherwise, right? So I really want to make this as detailed as possible. So there you go. We're going to work our way slowly. Every time you apply some of this product to the brush, make sure you buff it into the brush before you go into the skin. Don't let there be a whole load of product anywhere on your skin. It really needs to be an even layer. Let's buff some more. And you should slowly start to see kind of veil of colour, which may not feel like it's actually kind of like covering up a lot, but again, like I said, that's the point. We want it to be really light. There you go. Now that is definitely better than before, even though it's very light. Like I feel like it's a lot lighter than what I would usually go. It's what we want, because we want a natural finish, right? And this is where people think that the only difference between a kind of like medium to full coverage look and a natural look is the fact that you apply more makeup. Well, it's not always the case. As a professional makeup artist, most of the time you actually have to put more effort in to try and make it look as natural as possible. So a lot more that goes into it. Now, if you want to, at this point, you can add an additional layer. I personally would avoid that, because you can always do this a bit later, which is what I'm going to show you. Now, what we're going to do next is go in with a concealer. We don't want a concealer which is very heavy, so we're definitely not going to use the Tarte Shape Tape. I'm going to be using my NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer, because I feel like that is just like the perfect amount of coverage. Like, as in I can get a really light finish with it, with not so much coverage, and if I need more, I can always build it up without it looking cakey. Okay, so my shade is Ginger, which weirdly I feel like seems to be a universal shade. I swear people with much lighter skin than me use ginger. It's just really bizarre. So what I'm going to do here is actually apply it to the back of my hand. So I'm not applying it directly with the wand, because that's a big mistake when if you struggle with like getting the right amount of concealer. If you really want more precision and control over the coverage that you have, apply it on the back of the hand first before you actually apply it on with a wand. Now you probably notice if you've ever booked a professional makeup artist that they will never use well, they shouldn't anyway, use the wand of anything. And that's not just because of hygiene, right? A lot of the time we use the back of the hand or a palette. And number one, it's for hygiene, obviously, because you don't want to be dipping in and out of the same thing and going back and forth onto someone's face with the wand. But secondly, it actually gives you a much better finish because the warmth of your hand is going to really warm up that concealer and make it so much easier for you to actually apply it. And you're giving yourself the chance to buff the product into the tool that you're using to apply it onto your skin before you actually go directly onto the skin. Okay, so I have a damp beauty blender here. It's damp, but it's not too damp, so it's definitely not feeling wet on the hand. Now I'm gonna buff into this concealer on the back of my hand. I'm gonna make sure it really is spread out onto this sponge. I'm gonna do my eyelids first. So I'm just gonna like kind of lightly go over the eyelids. I'm going to flip the sponge over, so I'm using the part where there isn't any concealer applied, and I'm now going to blend this in very naturally. Not very naturally, that's a really weird thing that I just said. Very naturally, how do you apply something very naturally? Okay, flip it back over to the concealer side if you want more coverage there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Again, we're only working on the eyelids at the moment. Now, before I move on to anything else, I do want to get some powder, and I'm just going to get my Real Techniques brush, dip into this powder, which is my Makeup by Mario SurrealSkin Soft Blur Setting Powder, and then just press this on top. There you go. Eyelids are now done. We can get on with the rest of the face. Okay, so similar thing. We're going to get this concealer, put it onto the back of the hand. And I just want to add something here. When you are actually applying it to your eyelids first, and the reason I do that is because it just gets it out of the way and you don't have to worry about it kind of like creasing or anything. Always remember that don't go too much with that coverage. It's actually really easy. Like I would probably, if I'm being honest, I probably would have gone more with the coverage on my eyelids because of the darkness. It's a bit of a kind of like, it's a trick that it plays on your mind, because what happens is you can still see all this, right? When you are finishing off your eyelids and all this is dark. Well, on most people it is, you have the dark circles, right? So what happens is you naturally feel like you're kind of looking at this without looking at it, and it's affecting how the above part looks. Just don't do as much concealer there, because you end up going quite heavy on that, and then the rest of the face just looks like it hasn't got enough. So I still feel that this is quite, like, it's still a little bit dark. It's not as bright as what I would usually go, but I have to remind myself that actually it's because this isn't covered yet. The minute this gets covered, then you're gonna feel like it all looks a bit more natural. And let's be honest, I don't know if there actually is, but there's no one out there where it's totally, well, there probably is, like totally like no darkness there. So you wanna look realistic as well. We are gonna use the sponge again. We're gonna buff the concealer into the sponge. And now we're gonna focus on just this bit here first. We're not gonna go all the way across. We're just gonna kind of like get that coverage there. Slowly, bit by bit, take a look how that, you know, have a look at how that looks in the mirror. Because if you just go all in like this, it's great if you already know what you're doing and you've got the experience and everything, fine. But I'm trying to give you a very detailed understanding of achieving a natural look. And if you just do it bit by bit, it will give you an understanding as to how much more you need and where you need it. If you're not gonna look at what you're doing and the sponge is covering all of that while you're blending it in, well, you can't really see what you're doing really, right? So don't worry if this concealer self-sets a little bit, because actually, it's a good thing. It just makes it a little bit more opaque and easier to blend without it just disappearing. The more fluid it is, when you apply it, it's gonna disappear very quickly. So, okay, we've got it here, and I feel like we can go over to the other side, because we can always go in with a little bit more concealer if we feel we need it. but I don't feel that we're actually gonna need much more, because the minute you start applying things like a little bit of blush, things like that, to just really kind of like awaken your skin, you'll find it makes a big difference. Okay, we've got it here on this center bit. Now we're gonna spread this out here. And also what I would say is don't go very close to the lower lash line with your concealer. If you do, I know it's tempting because it's dark and you're trying to cover all of that up, but if you do, it looks very mask-like. It doesn't look natural at all. So if you feel like you have actually got a little bit too much very close to your lash line, what I would do is kind of just flip over the sponge, squeeze it so you're getting this kind of flat shape like that, and just go underneath your lower lashes, and it just picks up any excess product. The reason I wouldn't do that with the point at the moment is because we've got quite a lot of concealer there. So okay, I'm kind of happy with that. I do feel like I've got a little bit much on the very close to the lash line here, so I'm just gonna remove that. There you go. Okay, I still feel like, you know, I can see it's not as kind of like flawless as I want at the moment, but I have to remember that once we apply powder, once we apply a little bit of bronzer, it is going to warm up. It isn't going to look so, you know, how it does now. And also when you apply powder, it's going to stop it from looking so luminous, like not as luminous. We're not going for a matte look, but it isn't going to look so shiny as what it does now, right? Now at this point, what I want to do is actually go in with blush and a little bit of kind of like sculpting, and we're using all liquid products so that it doesn't look so heavy and cakey on the skin. So we're going to do all that first, and then once we've done that, we're going to then have a look at how we can add a bit more coverage if we need it. Okay, so I have my Charlotte Tilbury contour wand in medium here, and we're just going to add a little bit here. So 3 dots there, really easy. The placement of where I've applied this is roughly around the top part of your ear, and I understand all of this really does depend on where your features are set, because we're all different, but roughly this should give you an idea of how much space to leave there, right? So if you have a lot of space between all your features, you just need to figure out, right, based on where it is on her, where would I shift it along so that it fits in well with my features. So this is done here really to kind of almost like create that indent there, which then in turn will lift your cheekbone a little bit and give a bit of dimension to the face. So this here isn't just done for the sake of it, right? It's done to create a slight shadow. What we're going to do now is we're going to blend that in. You can use a brush or a sponge. I'm going to use a sponge, and I would personally recommend a sponge just because I feel like it's going to be a bit easier for you and you're buffing. So can you see we've got a very slight soft sculpt there. If you feel like you need more, you can go in more. It really is about how natural you want it, you know? I think I could probably go in with a little bit more, so let's do that. We'll just do 2 dots this time, so we're not applying this, you know, same amount. There you go. I'm really happy with that. Now you need to think about whether there's anywhere else on the face you want to apply this. And it isn't just about sculpting at this point. It could be just to warm up your face a little bit, you know, just to generally add a bit of dimension. And this is where where this helps you with what I mentioned earlier. I said to you that even if you feel like you haven't got the coverage you want at the moment, don't worry, because we can always adjust that later. Like, don't feel like you have to get it there and then perfect, right? Give yourself that time. So right now, I think what we could do is just add a little bit of depth around the face so that it doesn't look so flat. And this might actually make your base look way better, and then you realize that, okay, I actually didn't need any more coverage. So what we're gonna do here is just add 2 little dots there, very close to the hairline. And what this is gonna do is just to kind of like warm up the face a little bit and add some shape. Stops it from looking so flat. I feel like that's enough. Now if you wanna go side of the nose, okay, that's enough. Right, we've got this. Again, just gonna buff this in. See that? There you go. It's as simple as that. Now we've got a lot more depth on the face. It doesn't look so flat, and it actually makes the skin look a little bit better too, because it just makes it look a little bit alive. Now I want a blush which isn't gonna load on a whole load of pigment. So I'm gonna use my Hourglass Unreal Liquid Blush in Moment. And I'm just putting this on the back of my hand. Okay, I've got my sponge here. I'm gonna buff into this blush, really get it into the sponge well. Then we're going to go along to this top part here. We don't want a lot of blush, by the way, because it's going to be really obvious that we've got blush, and we want a very natural look, but we just want it to look very like a natural flush of color. It's one of my favorite colors. It's just so nice. Okay, I'd say that's enough. Already, I feel like my skin looks better. Like I feel like the coverage weirdly looks more than what it was earlier when it was just the foundation and the concealer. So I really do urge you to just trust the process and give yourself that time. Apply all this other stuff first before you go in with extra coverage. Okay, so right now I feel like all I need is the tiniest bit of coverage on my under eye, not a lot. So instead of going into my concealer, I'm gonna get my tinted moisturizer. I'm going to put this on the back of my hand. I'm going to get my beauty blender. I am going to buff the foundation or the tinted moisturizer into the sponge. Now very lightly, I'm going to just go over the under eye area. There you go. Not a lot. That's all I kind of need. Wherever else you feel that you want a little bit of coverage, that's it. It was a very small amount. Now what we want to do is we want to set the under eye first, because that's the first area that ends up creasing, but we also don't want it to look like super kind of dry and cakey there. So I'm going to go into my loose powder, but I'm using my Real Techniques brush, dipping into this powder, really getting that powder into the bristles. So really pressing into the powder. Now before I do that, I nearly forgot, I'm going to make sure, flip the sponge around, just make sure there's no product sitting in any of the creases there. And we're going to press here. You can use a pressed powder here if you want to, by the way. And if you are going to use pressed, then I would recommend the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish powder. I can never get the names right. So really just make sure you nicely set this under eye area. Now what I would do is, when you're doing this, press, right? And I would also make sure you go right onto the kind of like the side of the nose there. So all along, so basically from here, all along here. It's not just here. You want to really get it in here, because if this area looks shiny, it just looks weird. So you want to make sure you get that nice kind of like matte setting done correctly there. And everywhere else you can take your time and like be very strategic with your powder application to just set and not necessarily mattify the whole area. So let me think about the areas that I really want to make sure are set and don't necessarily go super greasy throughout the day. It's the side of the nose here. So I'm just gonna apply this here. I actually don't like the nose to be too matte, because I've noticed like throughout the day, if you mattify it too much, it's one of the areas that sticks out the most on your face, and it's also the area that if that looks super matte, it just looks like you're wearing a lot of makeup and it looks cakey. So just bear that in mind. So I'm gonna actually not apply this powder over my nose. I'm actually quite good with it because it doesn't necessarily come off through the day. If you feel that it does, get a little bit of powder, not a lot, and just kind of press, but not so much that you're left with powder there. It's a very small amount of powder. Okay, the other place that I feel like I probably need is just around the mouth, like the smile lines here. And the one place I don't like it to be shiny is in between my brows here. There you go. So you can see we've mattified it in all the right places. If there are areas on your skin, on your face, that you feel like, actually I just don't like the fact that I can see those open pores there, or you've got acne scars like I do around here, you can use your brush to press the powder in. But what I would recommend is just go over, you know, just small areas. Like you don't have to go over the whole area. That's it, right? We've already got the contour there and like the warmth in the face, so I don't actually need to go ahead and add any kind of powder products there. Right, we are gonna move on to my brows now, and this is another thing that you wanna keep quite natural, which by the way is so hard to do when you have sparse brows, but here we go. Okay, we're using the Benefit Fluff Up Brow Wax. Now this is a good brow wax to use if you want like a supernatural look, because this doesn't necessarily give them that laminated look. So we're just gonna brush through this, because you don't want that super laminated look, well, unless you do, because it can end up looking very unnatural. It just isn't a normal state that your brows are usually in. So we're just going to brush up diagonally, and we are going to flatten a bit, but it isn't, this product isn't like that strong that it does give you that look, like I said. Let's just get these lashes curled. There you go. If you feel like you've got a lot of concealer on your lashes from when you were applying your concealer there, like with a sponge, try and like just clean off your lashes with like a wet wipe. Like just put it like your fingers like this, and then just lightly press or pull very gently, and that's going to take off any makeup that you've got on there. I don't feel like I've got much there, so I'm fine with it, but make sure you do that first, because that's going to avoid your lashes kind of, well, just not looking the best possible way that they can. I think my brow product, yes, because we didn't apply too much, it's dry. We're gonna go in with the Benefit Mighty Fine Brow Pen in number 4. We're gonna be very light with this and not make the brows too thick. So I'm going from the underside. I'm not pressing very hard here. And we're just gonna get a nice... Okay, so that's enough. It's not too much. I don't feel like we've got too much product there. And I would also recommend you don't go with too much of a dark color, because it's just automatically gonna look obvious. So try and keep it a little bit lighter. Okay, so what we're going to do now is get a pencil. I'm using my Kosas Brow Pop Nano, and this is in dark brown, and we just want a really fine pencil for this. So wherever you feel that you've got a little bit of sparseness, I don't know if sparseness is a word, but if it's sparse, then you basically want to just replicate the hairs, like just draw hairs in those areas. Not all over, that's it. There's only so much that you can make your brows look, you know, natural, because when you have sparse brows, it's just really hard. But this is, I would say, the best way, so that when you are even close up to someone, you can't see the sparse areas. Okay, so there you go. We are done with the brows. So like I said, like if you have natural brows like without any sparse areas, then you're kind of good to go even with just a brow gel and maybe just a very tiny bit of kind of a brow pen or a brow pencil or something just to replicate hairs. You might have to actually skip out the brow pen altogether that I use, but I have quite sparse brows and they're kind of uneven in shape because of that fact. So I need to kind of like add a little bit more. So this is as much as I can kind of make them look natural. This is as far as I can kind of go. It might be a bit easier for you. Okay, so moving on, let's focus on the lips now. Now this is where I want you to focus on applying the lip product first. Now I'm going to use a lip oil, something that I'm loving currently, which is the new Summer Fridays lip oil. This is the Dream lip oil in Rosebud. It's just not too much pigment. It's just a really subtle way of adding some color. It's hydrating as well, so it doesn't look like you've got a whole load of like thick cream product on. And such a nice color. They do loads of different colors. So I've really kind of like layered that on. I've got a nice thick layer of that. And then what you want to do is just get tissue, dab very gently, so you don't want to take all of it off. I'm going to use an actual lip pencil, as in like when I say lip pencil, like an old school lip pencil, like not a waxy one. I'm using an actual normal pencil. So this is my MAC lip pencil in Beige Turner. And what I'm going to do is very lightly skim over the skin at the lip line. And it's like a kind of colour that is very similar to my natural lip colour. Very natural, like very lightly, and then we're just kind of like shading rather than drawing, right? So focus on shading rather than drawing. You can kind of like feather in as well, so that it doesn't look like a line. Use your finger to really blend the lip line in to the lip, so that it doesn't look disconnected from the lip product, the lip color. There you go. You can obviously apply however much lip product you want, and you can go even more with your blush or your bronzer, like your contour that you've applied. So that part of it is completely up to you. But what I really wanted you guys to see is just how you can tone it down and not make it look so heavy. So we're just gonna add some kind of mascara. I want a mascara that isn't a lot. So I'm using the Benefit Bounce Bad Girl mascara. Now I'm not going to wriggle it into the root of the lash because I actually don't want that thickness. I want it to look a little bit wispy and natural. We're not going to add a lot. There you go. That is more than enough. All that's done is actually enhance our lashes without looking like we've got mascara on. I think sometimes it's really easy to go overboard with things like mascara because you just kind of keep going. And when you don't need to. There you go. That is more than enough, because now my upper lashes look enhanced. They don't look like, okay, wow, she's got a whole load of mascara on, or they don't stand out in comparison to the rest of my face. So if you notice, every feature that we've done, every part of the face that we've done actually combines really well with everywhere else on the face. Like there's nothing that really stands out like, okay, that's standing out a little bit more. So everything is done within like the same kind of amount. Right? So lower lashes, just skim over the ends of the lashes. You don't need to go into the root at all. That is it. Super natural. And that is our finished natural makeup look. I mean, look, it kind of feels like as you go along that, okay, it's not a lot of makeup. If you compare how I look now compared to how I looked right at the beginning of this video, there is a big change. And that's what I want to explain to you, is that sometimes it's not so much about how much you apply, but it is about your technique and your layering and your blending and the tools you use and the pressure that you use. There's so much that goes into it. It isn't just about what you apply to your face, where you apply it, and the products you use. And hopefully this has kind of like shown you exactly what my point is. Now I do want to add, it would really, really help me if you subscribe, if you're not subscribed, and you like this video and you hit the bell button, because that kind of stuff actually helps my channel to grow. And I'm on a mission to get to 1 million soon, so we're really, really hoping that you can help us out. And I do have an online magazine which is called the Beauty Breakfast Club, and if you head on over there, you're going to find so much stuff. If you are really interested in beauty and learning more, then head over there, because I think you're going to love it. You got a couple of different subscription types. One's free, so that gives you access to the occasional post like newsletter, and the other is paid, but it's literally the equivalent of getting yourself a coffee a month, and it gives you access to the entire site. I write all the newsletters myself. Every other day there's a new newsletter. It could be anything to do with beauty, wellness. There's a nice little community that we're creating over there, and I would love to connect with you over there. So I'm hoping that you'll head on over. If you feel like you get anything from this channel, please show your support over there too. Don't forget that all the products are listed in my description, so you just need to head on over, click on the links, and it's going to take you straight to the product. And yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this video today and you've seen that you don't actually need to pile on the makeup. It's really a case of kind of knowing when to stop, and it's a habit that I've had to also deal with myself. It's very easy to make that mistake, so I fully understand it, but hopefully this will make you just a little bit more aware and conscious of what you're doing. So I guess I'm going to see you on the next video.